Greetings, everyone. My name is Graciana Figueroa, and today's discussion will be focusing on building cyber resilience in the United States healthcare sector. The healthcare industry is becoming an increasing target for cyber terrorists as there is a large financial gain when these attacks are successful. The healthcare industry is known for reining in large profits on an annual basis, and these profits only seem to increase, which concurs with the chances of a cyber attack occurring. The healthcare industry is also known for being very vulnerable, as those who work in the facilities and those who depend on the facilities, which are patients, often lack the basic tools, resources, and even just basic knowledge about security measures and precautions that should be put into place. So, today's discussion, we will be covering the attack on the Toronto Hospital for Sick Children. Then we will move to mitigation strategies for this type of attack. And lastly, we're going to end on the note of how to protect healthcare institutions going forward. So, the ransomware attack on the Toronto Hospital for Sick Children happened roughly 2 years ago, a week before Christmas. The healthcare institution is known for specializing in improving children's health and especially helping those who have critical needs. So, those who work in the facility and patients of the facility showed up business as usual, and they realized that most of the facility's digital devices, along with some medical devices, were compromised by a malware known as ransomware, which basically encrypts all the files and data, making it inaccessible to those who work in the facility. And the only way to decrypt these files is essentially paying a allocated amount that perpetrator or the cyber terrorist is asking for. So, as much as I could go into the discussion about Lockbit, essentially they're a notorious cyber terrorist organization and they run more like a business. They came up with a business product, which is known as a ransomware, and they will allow individuals or other organizations to use the ransomware as long as they promise to pay back Lockbit with some type of percentage of whatever profits they make from the attack because this ransomware is heavily financially grounded. A lot of money is supposed to be extracted from these victims. So, to prevent these attacks from going forward, there's essentially five mitigation strategies, although only four are listed here, but the fifth one is going to be discussed on in the later part of this discussion. So, if we start with the first step, is to respond, and we really want to minimize the response time in these attacks. Although we don't know how long the malware has been embedded in these systems, as soon as an attack is launched, we want to be quick in our response time. And I would argue that even before we move on to the second step, we do need to transport any critical care children to an alternative facility while we are sorting our way through this attack. Although these cyber terrorists may not be motivated to have any mass casualties, the last thing that we want to do is to provide these cyber terrorists with the satisfaction of knowing that they did succeed in something, which could be an innocent life loss. So I would transport these critical care children, and we're going to minimize that response time as much as we possibly can. The second step would be to report this incident to law enforcement and allocate a specialized cybersecurity team to this case. This ransomware attack is something that could be held accountable on the legislation side, which is why we want to inform law enforcement right away. But we also want to inform the higher entities that we have in place currently who specialize in cyber attacks, and that the first step would be to report it to the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, and from there we would contact the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, or the CISA, who is part of the Homeland Security Department, and they're going to be ultimately the individuals who could take care of this attack. And then we're going to move on to step three. And step three is going to be containment. Basically, the cyber team who is on this case is going to be tasked with finding the origin of where this ransomware malware came from. And we really just want to isolate that as much as we possibly can. I believe 60% of the digital devices were affected in this case of the Toronto hospital. So we really want to keep that 60% as 60%, and we don't want this to spread even further. So they're going to be tasked with finding the origin of the malware, and we're just going to try to secure any vulnerabilities that we still may have in the facility. And then we're going to go on to the fourth step. And the fourth step is going to be to recover. So the cybersecurity team will begin the process of restoring data, and this could be, initiating a new backup network for the facility to start using. Hopefully they were able to recover some data from the ransomware attack. And we want to start establishing the routine medical operations as soon as we can. This industry does lose out on a lot of profits, but more more importantly, patient care is affected during these type of attacks. And as much as we would wish, hopefully these attacks could be resolved in a few hours or days, chances are this could take up to a few weeks, even a few months. So we really want to start this recovery phase as soon as we can, and we want to restore the patient care. So the fifth step that we didn't cover, but it affects more the last part of this discussion, is going to be how to prevent these attacks from happening. And we really want to go over cyber strategies to protect the healthcare sector. So I would argue that this would happen through a bottom-up response. So we really want to educate healthcare employees on cybersecurity basics, teaching them about phishing scams. Most of the time when we see these ransomware attacks happen, it's because an employee perhaps clicked on an email too quick and they weren't able to detect any clues about, oh, this could be a possible malware embedded email. They're quick to sign a e-DocuSign or e-document, and essentially these employees are not given the basic security measures, how to prevent these attacks. So we really want to teach them about the the power of passwords, and not having the generic 123 password. We really want to teach them about phishing scams and what to look out for, what should seem suspicious. We want to make sure that their devices has antivirus programs installed, make sure there's strong firewalls, make sure their pop-up are blocked, pop-up blockers are enabled. And after we give them these basics, we want to make sure that we're checking in with them continuously. We want to make sure we're scanning computers maybe on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, just to ensure that nothing suspicious could be going on behind the scenes, because again, once these attacks are launched, it is vital to put them to an end right away. But we want to be proactive, and we want to ensure that we're doing as much as we can from the bottom up to ensure that we are doing the best that we can to prevent these attacks. So we really want to be proactive. And then if we move up a level, I would argue that, we mandate some type of statewide cybersecurity standard legislation. This is going to vary, obviously, state to state, but we just want to ensure that healthcare providers are putting cybersecurity at the forefront of their responsibilities, although they are, concerned with serving the public health and making sure that's up to standard. These health these healthcare cyber attacks are no longer going to be a discussion of if they're going to happen, and instead it's going to be when it's going to happen. So we want to ensure that healthcare providers have some type of security measures in place, because all institutions of all scales are going to be now targets. So it could be these large institutions such as Kaiser Permanente, but it could also be the local physician who could be a victim of this crime. So we just want to ensure that healthcare providers are going to be mandated to provide either a specialized IT team, or just make sure that they're providing, again, weekly, monthly, biannually seminars on the usefulness of having cybersecurity measures and providing that knowledge onto their employees. And then the last step that I would propose, and this may seem a little extreme, because when you bring in finances with the federal government, you never know what type of reaction you would get. But I would propose that we have federal funding for developing specialized teams for the healthcare sector when there is a cyber attack. And I would even argue that we need to have a specialized team for each critical infrastructure in the US that we are trying to protect from having a major cybersecurity act, as there is not one to date. But again, this possibility is only increasing. I just believe that if we have a specialized team other than the CISA, it would be more of a proactive measure because these individuals will only be concerned about the healthcare sector. There's many, many healthcare sectors in the United States. So, obviously this would be perhaps a sub branch of, the US Department of Homeland Security, and then they would go down the pyramid here and, create maybe specialized teams for each state or each major healthcare sector and one for just the small healthcare institutions. But I would propose that, having this specialized team could create more of an ease of, when this attack happens, these healthcare institutions have a direct line that they could contact, which would hopefully, lessen the effects of these cyber attacks. Thank you so much for your time.